So I recently took on a brand new client, and naturally we got on to talking about all things retirement and pensions. And for some reason, this guy just seemed to be so preoccupied, so obsessed with understanding like where he was at with his pension funds compared to the average person. He was like, I just kind of want to know how stressed to be about it. Now, to be honest with you, I didn't actually know the figures. I couldn't really pin down the exact numbers. I could give him a good guess, but I just didn't know the exact figures. So I thought, what I'll do is I will figure it out. So I went away and actually did the research. And when I showed him the findings and kind of where he sat in comparison, I literally saw the blood kind of drain from his face. And he goes, okay, just to tell me exactly what to do to get ahead of the game step by step. So that's exactly what I did, right? And in today's video, I want to show you the research so that you can find out where you are. And if it makes you sweat and panic, you'll definitely want to follow the exact step-by-step process that I used to get this guy back on track without making massive sacrifices. Speaking of step-by-step, if you want more of this kind of practical financial advice or financial guidance, I send out a weekly email where I share hints and tips for turning your income into financial security. Stuff that I don't usually get time to cover in the videos. Links in the description if you want to sign up. Okay, so let's crack on. So here is something that honestly drives me pretty crazy, right? I'll have someone sit down across from me and I'll be like, right, okay, tell me about your pensions. And they're just sort of sat there looking like some sort of deer in the headlights. I think I've maybe got this one, or maybe I've got this one over here from that place that I used to work at, and blah, 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 blah. This literally happened to me a couple of years ago with a client. I've been working with them for ages. We're 2 years into a cash flow modeling, retirement forecasting, planning piece of advice. We've got spreadsheets, projections, the whole thing sorted down to the minutiae. And one day she messages me and goes, hey, I was cleaning out my old filing cabinet and I found this old statement. Turns out she had a job from 15 years ago that had 50 grand in it, £50,000. So naturally, our entire plan was suddenly completely wrong just because we were missing a massive chunk of money. So before we can talk about where you stand with everyone else and all that sort of stuff, you have got to figure out what it is you've actually got. And I mean literally figure it out to the penny. So first thing you need to do, I want you to do this today, not next week, not whenever. Grab a piece of paper or the notes app on your phone or Google Docs or whatever it is and think back through every single job you've ever had. Yep, literally every single one, right? So even that sort of summer job at Tesco's when you were 18, did they put you into a pension scheme? If they did, brilliant. Write down every single company that you've worked for. And look, I know this is all really boring. You're probably thinking, yeah, I'll do it later. But every day you don't know what you've got is like another day that you can't make a proper plan. It's like trying to navigate without knowing where you're starting from. Super, super important. Just get a grip on it. So once you've got that, this is the bit where it does get a little bit tedious potentially, but trust me again, it's worth it. It'll all be worth it. You need to track down each pension and find out what it's worth today. Should be pretty simple. Now, most companies will have sent you something called a pension statement or an annual statement, particularly when you left. If you can't find it, don't panic. Most of them do online logins these days. A lot of them will have like apps or personal websites that you can go in, or you can just call them up. Now, yeah, it might be a bit of a faff, it might take a few phone calls, but honestly, this is something that once you get clarity on it, you can really start to build from the base up. So we're talking about something serious, we're talking about your retirement here. So get the information, find out what you've got, find out how much is in each one of those pensions. So once you've got all those numbers, obviously just add them all up. So that is what your total pot, your sort of pension provision is right now. So don't necessarily worry about like each individual fund. Just for now, say, right, I've got 5 pensions with £10,000 in them each. Therefore, I have £50,000 worth of total pension pot. Okay, don't worry about the details for now. It's just those. So write that number down. That is the sort of flagship starting point. And honestly, just writing that number down puts you ahead of literally half, maybe more than half actually, more than half of the people that I meet. Now, look, if you're sitting there feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of this already, I totally understand. Or if you've got specific questions or specific situations, maybe you found some pensions you're not sure what to do with next, you can book a one-to-one session with me, links in the description. Sometimes it just helps to have someone look at the actual numbers and give you a proper plan. No judgment, just clarity. Links in the description if you want to reach out. Okay, so remember the client I spoke about who wanted to know where he stood? Well, what I did was I went to the Office for National Statistics and looked up a bunch of comprehensive pension studies to actually collate all the data together to give a more up-to-date feel of where we should be. And honestly, even from where I was, when I first saw those numbers, I was a bit shocked and also started kind of panicking a little bit about my own situation. But never mind, we crack on. So here is what the average person in the UK has saved in their pensions by age. Apologies if this is a little bit small, you might not be able to see it, but we'll go through it now. So if you're aged between 16 and 24, the average is about 5,500. Fair enough, just starting out, all good to have any pension provision at that age. By 25 to 34, it jumps to 18,800. Then from 35 to 44, you're looking at about 40k, 39,500. And that is really the golden zone, right? That's the hockey stick of that exponential curve. That's where it starts to get a little bit more serious. Now, 45 to 54, the average is £80,000. Now, notice something here. Basically, it doubles every decade. So it's a nice sort of incremental average. But obviously, look what happens when you have the final push from 55 to 64. It jumps to about 140,000, 137,800 is the exact figure. That's because obviously people start panicking and ramping up their contributions when retirement is actually staring them in the face. Don't do that. Do this earlier. You'll be way ahead of the averages. Anyway, we'll go through that in a little bit. I've put sort of 65 to 75 and 75 plus on there. Not really relevant, but it just shows you the accumulation followed by the decumulation. And that's a really important thing to bear in mind. But for now, probably just focus on the pre-65 stuff. So that's the basic trajectory. Right, confession time. How did that make you feel? Did those numbers make you feel better or worse? Are you sweating? Are you panicking? Or are you thinking, do you know what, actually, I'm not a million miles away here. So I'm really interested to know as a general poll. So if you can let me know in the comments below, just comment sort of better or worse, right? No judgment, as I said. I really think it's important that we sort of get a bit of context as to where we are and how it all works and all that sort of stuff. So here's the thing. When I showed that client these numbers, he was sat there sort of doing the maths in his head, right? Comparing himself to all of these averages. But here's when that got really, really interesting. So my client looks at those averages and he goes, right, but I earn more than the average person. So what does that kind of really mean for me? And I was like, brilliant question. Now we're talking, right? That is exactly the right question to ask. So what? Because, yeah, look, if you're earning £80,000 a year and someone else is earning £25,000 a year, you're not going to be aiming necessarily for the same pension pot. It's sort of improbable. It doesn't make any sense. So this is where we use something called the salary multiple framework. Now, again, it's not perfect, but it gives you a much better sense of where you should be based on your actual income, not just sort of national averages. So, as a general rule of thumb, it goes something like this. By age 30, you want roughly 1 times your salary. Okay, so if you're earning £40,000, you'd want £40,000 in your pension. By 40, you would want 3 times your salary. So again, if you're earning the same salary, £40,000, you'd want to be at 120 by that point. By 50, we're looking at 6 times. 6 times? Yeah, 6 times your salary. So that's what, £240,000 on that £40,000 income. And by 60, ideally, you'd want 8 times your salary, £320,000 in this case. So it gives you a little bit more context as to what actually you should be looking at for your own circumstances. So this guy, I was talking through all these numbers with him, and he goes, great, okay, but what does that specifically mean for me? And that is massively when it started actually clicking for him in terms of thinking, right, well, what do these averages mean? But actually, how do I correlate and translate that to what I actually want? And that's when it all came into place. Because think about it. If you, right now, watching this, want to retire at 55 and live on a yacht and drink champagne every day, you're going to need a very different pension fund than someone who's happy working until 67 with a modest lifestyle and living quietly in their paid off house, right? Everything, and I cannot stress this enough, everything, and this goes for anything to do with personal finance as well, everything is contextual. Everything can look good, in terms of numbers and figures on a bit of paper, but everything is contextual to you. So I had another client, right, who on paper looked behind on all of those averages, but when we mapped out what she actually wanted, like part-time work until she was 65, I think she wanted to work for as long as possible. She only wanted a modest lifestyle. The house was paid off. She was absolutely flying comparatively to what she needed. She had more than enough. So what you need to know is pretty much this. Where am I today? And where do I want to be? And it's the gap in the middle of those two things that is the most important thing to worry about. Not what you've got or where you want to be, but actually how you get to those various points and understanding how to actually do that. So let me show you how you figure out how you go from what you've got today to where you want to be in the future in retirement. And ignore these sort of broad averages. They're great context, but they don't work that well. So the other day, I was watching The Patriot, right? The film with Mel Gibson, American Revolution, all that sort of stuff. Brilliant film, right? And I was watching this scene, and I hadn't seen it for years, and I'd sort of forgotten that I was watching this scene where he's teaching his son to shoot, right? And he says, aim small, miss small. The idea is that if you aim at a tiny target, even if you miss, you won't miss by much, right? But if you're broadly just aiming at nothing in particular, you could end up anywhere. And honestly, that's exactly what most people do with their pensions. They are just chucking money in every single month or arbitrarily signing up to their workplace pension, hoping that somehow it will just work out. They're aiming at absolutely nothing. So here's what we need to actually do. We need a target. We need to aim small. So the first question, this is where you need to start fleshing out what you actually want your potential retirement to look like. What do you want? Because there's no universal right or wrong answer here. When do you want to stop working? Do you want to stop working? Do you want a phased retirement? What might you need? So think about starting to pick a specific number. I don't mean just, when I've got enough money, I think I can retire. No, don't do that. Make it real, right? Think about your life. Do I want to retire at 60 so I can have an amazing 10, 20 years of my retirement before I get too old? Or do you want to retire at 65 because you think that, retiring is to expire, all of those things. So just whatever it is, pick a yardstick in the sand. Let's say for the purposes of this, that you decide that 60 is a good retirement date for you. So the next question is, what sort of income do you want when you retire? We know that broadly speaking, you want to go at age 60, but what does that actually mean? Now, I can't tell you that because everyone's different, right? But there's a few rules of thumb. Not sure I necessarily agree with this one too much, but generally speaking, people will say try to retire on about 50% of what you're earning. So that, generally speaking, covers the things like you're not commuting anymore, you're not buying work clothes, you're not paying into a pension, your mortgage might be paid off. So you won't go a million miles wrong by having that as a yardstick. There are a couple of resources that will give you a broad understanding of what general lifestyle costs might look like. But broadly speaking, pick a figure. So again, whatever it might well be, just say, okay, I'm earning 50 grand now. I want £25,000 a year at age 60, whatever. So pick a figure that is an actual target, So now we know age 60, 25 grand a year is what you broadly want. Now, obviously all of this can change. It's not set in sand. It's not like a built on thing, but it's moving you in the right direction. Now, here's where it gets a little bit mathematical, but stay with me because it's really, really important. To figure out what pension pot, what pension fund you're going to need to generate that income sustainably, key phrase, for the rest of your life, you need to take that desired income and multiply it by 25. So again, whatever amount of money you want to have in retirement, multiply that by 25. Now, I said that the word income sustainability is the absolute key phrase here. That's because you want to be able to sleep at night knowing that, generally speaking, you're not going to run out of money. There is no guarantees. The investment markets can go very strange. You can lose money. You can have periods of high tax and high inflation that make life cost of living very, very high. But generally speaking, you won't go far wrong with this formula right here. So again, with what we were talking about, we want £25,000 a year. We times that by 25. We need a pension fund value of £625,000. Okay. Now, that is quite a lot of money, but let me just quickly tell you why it's times by 25. This goes back to this income sustainability rule. It's based on the 4% withdrawal rate. Now, what that basically means is if you withdraw about 4% from your pension pot each year and your underlying investments within your pension pot grow reasonably, your money should, key phrase, last about 30 years into retirement. It's not perfect. There's a million other videos on withdrawal rates and the 4% rule. I'm not going to waste your time in this video. It's not perfect, but it's a brilliant starting point to understand broadly. Aim small, miss small. Okay, so now you've got your target. You want £625,000 by age 60. Now we can actually answer the question, can't we? And let's have a little look. Are you on track? Are you ahead? Are you behind? Let's have a little look. So this is where I want to jump over and show you something a little bit more practical, something that you can actually use to tailor this to your own circumstance. So at this point, what you should have is an understanding of where you are, the amount of pensions that you've got, a rough understanding of broadly what age you want to retire, whatever that means to whoever. But again, broadly speaking, what your plans are, and an estimate of the amount of income that you require multiplied by 25 to give you a fund value target. So I've created this tool. It's a brilliant tool. I use it every single day. It's what I call the savings thermostat. About 1,000 people have used it now to figure out how much they are on track to get to that fund value. It's basically an app that tells you whether you're running hot or cold when it comes to hitting your retirement goals. You can also use it for investment pots and things like that. Now, you can grab this yourself for free. Link in the description. You can play along as we go. Download it for free now. It's a great tool. You can use it for any sort of plan or objective you have. So let's very quickly jump over to that now. Okay, so this is the savings thermostat. Apologies if it is a little bit small, but again, download it in the link in the description below. It's yours to keep. Have a play with it. See how you get on. Now, the idea here is this will tell you whether you're ahead or behind of where you need to be. So in this scenario, let's say, for example, we've got current value. Now, for sort of interesting purposes, let's say we want to start at 0. You're starting at absolute 0 today. Let's say the target value is, let's go with £625,000 because that is the amount of money that we've been talking about so far. So £625,000 is the target value to pay £25,000 a year. Let's assume the target date is that you in 30 years time. So if you're 30 and you want to retire at 60, let's assume that is 2055. Sorry. Let's assume that's 2055. Keeps doing that. Sorry. Apologies. And just for that. Now, let's also assume the rate of return that you're going to get is 8%, broadly in line with stock market type returns, but ignore that for now. Let's also assume that you're paying in £500 a month into your pension or whatever investment it is that you want. So this assumes you're starting at 0, you're about to contribute £500 a month, maybe to like a workplace pension or a private pension or something. Try to get that figure from your pay slip. That'll give you a really good indication as to how much is actually going into your pension. So let's just see what it says. So essentially here, what you can see is it gives you a really good indication as to whether you are ahead or behind of where you need to be. So we know that we want a fund value of £625,000 in 30 years' time. The rate of the return that we're going to get is about 8%, broadly speaking, and you can change that to whatever level of risk or level of return that you think you're going to get. And we're starting from 0 today in 30 years. Broadly speaking, we're on track. In fact, we're marginally ahead of the game. So we're putting in £500 a month. We actually only need to put in £455 per month. We've got 349 months left. It's a bit morbid when you think about it like that. And the projected value there of what your monthly contributions are 687. So well ahead of the game. So let's say, for example, we change that to, I don't know, let's say, let's reduce that down actually to 200. Now that's going to change that back. £200 per month. And then you'll see that now we are behind. So you'll be able to get a really good understanding of, okay, look, I'm behind on my monthlies. I need to increase it to 455. So use this tool, put in your exact situation. What is your pension current fund value? How much are you currently paying in via workplace pensions? Don't forget to put your employer matching in there as well. What target value you need, which is what amount of money, what amount of income do I want, times by 25. That's your fund value, broadly speaking. And by when do you need it? So again, this is in 30 years time. And what rate of return am I, broadly speaking, going to get? If you don't know the rate of return, you won't go wrong with sort of the 6% a year. That will give you a sort of broad understanding of what level of return you might get. But check the underlying fact sheets or some information about the underlying investments that you're invested in within your pension. It will give you a sort of back-tested or historic rate of return. Now, it's not gospel, and of course it's subject to change and isn't a reliable indicator of future returns, but it'll give you a broad understanding of where you need to be. So have a play with that. It's yours. It's free to use, and basically enjoy it. Yeah. So, right. Having all of that, and being on target and having the right target means nothing if your pension is sitting in the wrong investment or underinvested, more importantly. See, most people's pensions are on what's called the default setting, and that could be costing you thousands of pounds a year, which is why you should watch this video here next, where I'm going to show you how one simple change could significantly boost your pot and get you back on track without increasing what you pay in per month. So check it out, give it a click, and I'll see you there.